as of this moment, we are now going to open the floor for your questions. Please be reminded that we have a limited time for the question and answer. So let me read the first question for Natalia. So we have here from Ma'am Yoli, what were the challenges you faced when you were just starting to advocate for Ron?
So should I go ahead and reply to that question? Okay.
Yes.
So I think that the first, and maybe you will be surprised, or maybe this will resonate with you all, but one of the most important challenge was to convince lawyers. You can think that this is crazy, but lawyers learn in law school in Law 101 that subjects of rights are people and corporations. They don't even, and we in general don't even question that corporations can have rights, but we all learn, and law students learn, that corporations and people have rights, but nature is an object. So one of the biggest challenges that we had was actually the legal community, even the environmental legal community, that was really opposed in this idea of change, of moving towards recognizing that nature was a rights-bearing entity, because for them nature was only an object. So I think that is an important challenge that I see now. For example, now that we've been in Chile, and that Chile has passed amazing, beautiful language for the protection of nature and the recognition of the rights of nature. There was a letter actually that was sent 2 days ago from a big buffet, not only one, but many buffets of lawyers in Chile who were saying how threatening are the things that the Chilean Convention is promoting, including the rights of nature. So the legal community in general is very, and I can say I work with amazing lawyers, but many times it's very close-minded and it doesn't allow a law to evolve. However, we need to recognize the law is always evolving. Fortunately, of course, we were able to abolish slaverism, but we were also able to vote. Of course, women were not allowed to vote, and now we have political rights, of course. Indigenous people were not recognized their collective rights, and law evolved and changed to recognize collective rights. So we need to see that law is an evolving discipline. And of course, now that the earth is screaming for its rights, and it's saying that we need to stop the harm, it's definitely time to move forward and allow a law to evolve. So I think, Yoli, one of the most important challenges was breaking that. But fortunately, since 2008, almost 14 years later, we can say that now, for example, Ecuadorians don't question any longer that nature is a subject of rights. They can understand and they can see now that is still a challenge, that we cannot fully guarantee the rights of nature. There are still a lot of violations for the rights of nature. However, we can recognize when there is a violation of environmental law and when there is a violation of the rights of nature. And we already understand that we don't question that nature is a subject of rights. We are just figuring out, what's the best way to protect it, how do we guarantee it with a system that is still, in general, treating nature as an object. But we don't question that any longer, and I feel that's quite important, because the change in our constitution has been able to help us change our society, and that's quite important for sure.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your experiences, especially the challenges that you encountered. So we have another question here. What is the response of the church to the idea in your country with regards to Ron?
What is the response of the church?
Yes.
Sure. So, well, the church has always been, I will say, an ally, and it became a bigger ally after Laudato Si. So not only in Ecuador, but all over Latin America, we work with the Catholic movement in general and the church in general. In Ecuador, we are a Catholic country, and I think that even now that the Pope Francis is like even talking about like that we need water instead of minerals, and he's always talking about this home that we all share, and especially after the Laudato Si, the church became even a bigger ally. So I will say that the church has been very close even to the environmental conflicts, and has been definitely an ally, especially in like smaller communities, guaranteeing also the rights of rights of nature defenders. And I'm glad now that it's not only the church in a small scale, but it's now the church at a bigger scale after Laudato Si. So definitely it's been an ally, because we're all talking about the same language. We're all talking that we need to protect nature, to protect ourselves even, but that we need to understand, and speak a little bit in San Francis dialogue, and start listening to nature.
Okay, so the church has a big role in this movement.
Okay. Yeah, it does. It does. It's different to different countries, but I think that after the Laudato Si, it's definitely has an even bigger role.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have another question here. Here in the Philippines, we are having an election this May. And can you talk about the character of your leaders who push for rights of nature, especially President Correa? So it may serve as a guidance for Filipinos in making their choice.
Thank you for that question, Benito. And I wish I could tell you that President Correa was an advocate of the rights of nature, but unfortunately he wasn't. And actually, we were able to rewrite our constitution during the time that President Correa was on power, and that he decided to promote, of course, the rewriting of his constitution. But I was there during that period, and one of the things that I remember him saying when we were done with the constitution was that he reviewed the constitution, and he said, I'm sorry for the word, but what are the stupid things that were promoted? And one of them for that was the rights of nature. So we actually, and the reason why rights of nature was not fully guaranteed in Ecuador during the past 14 years was because the first 10 years of rights of nature, we had a president that was completely against the rights of nature. President Correa promoted open pit mining and oil development, and really went against us. We were persecuted during that time, and it wasn't a good time for the rights of nature or for rights of nature defenders. So unfortunately, I cannot tell you that he was a rights of nature defender. However, there was some independence of the Constitutional Assembly members from the executive power, and the constitutional members that were the ones who promoted and who voted in favor of the rights of nature were definitely people that were dreaming about a new country. There were people, I wouldn't say that they were like all like from the left wing, but I can definitely say that there were people that were really inspired of and dreaming about a new Ecuador. We were at a stage at that point where we had the worst environmental spill in the Amazon in the world, in Ecuadorian territory, with the Texaco in our Amazon. At the same time, we were promoting this idea of leaving fossil fuels underground, and we were recognizing that we were home of maybe the most biodiverse place in the world, that is the Yasuni National Park. And it was the right timing for the assembly members to really be bold and promote a new idea. So the advice that I can give you for the elections that are coming up in the Philippines is to really elect bold people who are willing to be creative and to give these like big, amazing steps, and don't be afraid of that. I feel, and that is the same case of what is happening now in Chile, people that are willing to break the paradigms and move forward, no matter what side they're on, left or right. The idea, and I think that right now, different from 2008, in 2022, you cannot afford to have a leader who doesn't believe on climate change, who is not willing to promote the rights of nature and recognize the environment and work for the environment. I think that since we are in the midst of a environmental catastrophe, we cannot really elect people who are not thinking about how do we reconcile this relationship with nature. So for me, and we actually did that for the last elections, we did something that it was called the Verdescopio, we called it, and we rated our candidates on how green they were. If they were green, we actually rated them as green, medium, or toxic for the environment. And that was the way that we rated our politicians and guided citizens that are really thinking of this new paradigm on how to vote. So if you can follow that tracking of the elections, I can give you that advice that really worked out for us.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Actually, here in PMPI, we conducted a research, the power of purple, and the measures that we used is for environment, climate change, mining. So their track record about these thematic issues, and we share it to our partners. So thank you very much for your answer. So next, we have another question. How did you convince every citizen or different sectors in the community to implement the law? And I would like to add na rin po an additional question. How do you engage? How did you engage the IP community or Indigenous people community in this campaign? So the first one is the citizens, and then the second one is the IPs.
So what I can tell you from what happened in Ecuador is that different from what happened with the feminist movement or the indigenous movement, the rights of nature movement did not grow out of like a big social civil society sector towards the constitution. It was actually the opposite in some way. It came from up to down. It didn't go from like the community up. So we were able to include it in the constitution as a very new thing and very new idea. And then we had to water it down to the society. And that was not easy, and it's still not easy. And I can tell you that I think that most of the people in Ecuador know that we have rights of nature provisions in their constitution, but not all of them are empowered with it. So we have done various campaigns of rights of nature to educate people about the rights of nature. But most importantly, we are still educating, and we're not done yet because we're still facing judges who don't know this. We have had to train judges and people dealing with law in general, because if a community gets empowered and brings a rights of nature case to a court, and the judge doesn't know how to process a rights of nature case, then the case is going to fail. And we still have a lot of judges who don't really understand and grasp the idea of the rights of nature. So we are still doing educating judges on what is this new thing, because rights of nature is not environmental law. You cannot rule on a rights of nature case only by knowing a law. You need to know biology. You need to know, get indigenous people inside. You need to know, get, like an expert on monkeys and orchids, So it's been really interesting because the judges who have really understood the idea of rights of nature have done so, getting, for example, amicus curiae, that is this tool, these friends of the judge, to understand what is happening to the monkey, to the orchid, to the flower, to the bird, to the indigenous population, and then understanding all the perspectives they have been able to rule for, in favor or against the case. So it hasn't been easy. I can tell you that not every citizen in Ecuador is like empowered with the rights of nature. However, now I feel that especially all like communities, especially those struggling with social environmental conflicts, are aware of the rights of nature and are willing even to take this into court. About your second question was citizens and then indigenous people. This in the same idea. Indigenous people were not engaged with the rights of nature at the beginning. I remember when we were speaking in 2008 with some indigenous people about the rights of nature, not all of them knew about it. Not all of them, it wasn't even part of their fight. Because if you go back to indigenous communities, some indigenous communities don't even have a word for the word rights in their language. Because for them, it's not, you don't need to give rights to nature to treat nature as a mother. they treat nature as a mother without necessarily giving her rights. So it was, of course, easy for them, because I feel that rights of nature is a way to translate their cosmovision, their worldview, into a more like legal instrument. But it's how they already relate to nature. So I think that the concept of rights of nature is a translation of their cosmovision. So of course, when we had the rights of nature in the Constitution, it was easy to get indigenous people on board, because they understood how this goes completely together with their struggle and with their fight, and how this strengthens their own struggle, because whatever is happening to nature is happening to them as well. So this we were able to now, and we, for example, go to court to fight for collective rights, for the lack of indigenous consultation, and for the rights of nature. So this has really strengthened indigenous fights.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. So we have a last question here. So some of our politicians and even environmental defenders are uncomfortable with the idea, because they feel that they're even marginalized, the people, in terms of access to nature. And what is your take on this?
I think what's very important is to understand that when we are giving rights of nature, we are not telling people do not touch nature. We're not saying that nature is intangible. That's not the point of the rights of nature. We're just saying that we need to live in harmony with nature. That is quite different. So to those people that are still afraid of that, they need to understand that the rights of nature is not really going to prohibit them or people from entering. What we're doing with the rights of nature is understanding that if nature is a subject of rights, then my rights stop when nature rights start. As the same thing that will happen with my rights and your rights. My rights will stop when your rights start. And hence, what we need to do is change our relationship and understand that if you're a human being, for example, and you fall, and you maybe have a bruise or something, that will heal in, like maybe within a month or something. But if someone comes and cuts your arm, that arm will not grow again. So how are we dealing with nature? Are we doing an activity that is going to cut nature's arm? That will not allow nature to, if the activity will not allow nature to regenerate integrally, then that activity should not happen. However, we cannot avoid harming nature. Unfortunately, we need transportation and we need to cut a tree to build a house. We're going to need to use nature, of course, but we need to reconcile our relationship with nature, change it and say, thank her for what she's giving us and give her also something in exchange, but not only take. That is what we have been doing with nature and cutting arms and legs of nature without allowing her to regenerate. That is what is leading us to this environmental disaster. So I feel that the most important message here is do not think about rights of nature making nature intangible. It's just a message of how to change the relationship with nature.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you for that. The harmonious relationship with our nature. So I'm sorry we have the last one. So I'd like to remind everyone that this will be the last question. Do you have any tools on how to capacitate these elected officials in the Philippines in order to effectively implement Rights of Nature Act?
So definitely, we as GARN, with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, that is our task to educate and bring forward educational tools for everybody, for judges, for normal citizens, for authorities. So of course, do contact us to help you with tools. We have, for example, a lot of tools that we have used here in Ecuador, that we actually have this whole training that is translated to Spanish and English to how to train authorities and judges. So we can definitely share that with you all. That is definitely a very interesting training for elected officials, and we can definitely always adapt something. We are hoping to create, as I was sharing with GARN, we have created a global hubs for the rights of nature, and we have been talking with PMTPI to see if we can create an Asian hub for the rights of nature, where we can also land the idea of the rights of nature and the tools that we have created also in Asia with the appropriate language for the culture in Asia in general. So, of course, if something needs to be created, especially for the Philippines, we can definitely work with our partner organizations. That in this case, of course, a PMPI is a partner is a member of GARN, and we will be very pleased to share every tool that we might have, because we are sharing the same mission, that is to promote and really implement the rights of nature.
Wow. Thank you very much, Natalia, for your very clear and direct explanation and discussion to all of us. So we are very happy. And of course, thank you very much for our active participants. So